Excellent. So now we are here.
Jacqueline,
Um,
so, well, I just want to say that I tried to turn on my video and yeah, it started acting funny. So I'm just gonna go out and restart my system to make sure that
okay,
everything is fine. So
super.
once
We
I'm back,
can.
I'm gonna send you a chat.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for responding to our chat and following our prompts and voting in our polls. So I'm Jacqueline Demendive, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Workforce Planning and Development Board. And it's my pleasure to be able to be here and be your host for this morning as I walk you through the Change Matters results reveal. So I'm just going to share our results from our poll this morning to see who we have attending. So seeing our business owners, our HR, a lot from workforce development, employment and service providers, and a lot of you joining us from your home offices. So thank you for having me sort of in your home in a way, and I'm at home as well. I'll begin with a little bit of an introduction. The Change Matters survey, which is a project funded by the Ministry of Canada, the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario. This survey came about when we saw the responses of community organizations for the recovery of the economy. We saw a unique need to really focus on workforce as a driver of our community, but also as a driver for local employers. We wanted to find out and quantify the specific workforce changes that we've seen to better inform those who will be responding to these changes on our path to recovery. So if you responded or helped gather responded, I'd like to really thank you. And I'm so excited to share with you these engaging data pieces that we've assembled. And I'm also lucky to be joined by some fantastic collaborators and partners today, which leads me to our agenda. Today we'll be starting with the data reveal, followed by a 10-minute Q&A with data analyst Bashir Adeyemo. And then I'll take you over to the listening room to discuss the sort of matter side of our Change Matters campaign. Then I have two community champions who will really speak to how this information is going to be used and what it means for our area at large. And then I'll leave you with some next steps and some parting thoughts. So with that, let's dive right into the presentation. Okay, so a little background on survey collection. Our target sample was 388. We ended up with a target sample of 314, and you'll notice our confidence level or confidence rate, which is at 90%. This is determined from a variety of factors by our researchers, including the sample size and the margin of error. So that 90% confident rate is more than acceptable for this field of research. We did strive for a representative sample. Of course, you see a lot of manufacturing in our end collection. We have a large manufacturing sector in this area, followed by accommodation, food services, and retail trade, which is also representative for our area. A little bit about where we collected from. So this encompasses Oxford, London, Elgin County, St. Thomas, and Middlesex County. And a little bit about business sides. We see a lot of those SMEs in our area, and that's sort of reflected in the business sizes who responded, with a smaller level, those 500 plus big business. And right off the bat, we already come into some really fascinating numbers. This is a question about how do you expect staffing numbers to change over the next 6 months? And if you look at this sort of 75%-ish 3/4 slice, you'll see that we have the no change. So no change to staffing levels. We have our folks who are going to be hiring more than 10 people, and then we have our slight increase folks who are going to be hiring less than 10 people. And that, far outstrips the major decrease, which is going to be having to let go of more than 10 people, or slight decrease, which is having to let go of less than 10 people. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that really fascinating number. Now, a higher proportion of those who are going to be doing our major increases in hiring are going to be manufacturing, administration, and support, waste management, and remedial services. 60% of overall respondents have between 100 and 500 employees. So that's a significant number, and those who are looking to hire from those industries will do well by looking at the next slide to really understand where they can find talent pools. So we have our major decrease, also a small percentage, but those groups are from accommodation and food services, manufacturing, healthcare, and it's going to be really important to coordinate because there's definitely job seekers in these sectors that have transferable skills that can serve the businesses who will be increasing. So think the food services to manufacturing, for example, or from arts and entertainment to administration. And businesses that are hiring may want to look in these sectors in order to find the right candidates. Next, a question about age groups. We asked about age groups because we wanted to observe the impacts on affected groups. A survey that we conducted at the beginning of the pandemic found out that our under 25s were some of the most hit from job loss due to the pandemic, and we do continue to see that there's a small representation of that younger group in the labor market. As for breaking down those numbers, so a large amount of those under 30s are in accommodation and food services. Other services, that's going to be things like your nonprofits and agriculture. And the 55 above, of course, a very sensitive group. So we have mostly in retail trade and in manufacturing. We asked, are any of your employees on short-term layoff? So, with the expectation that they may come back or not, depending on how the economy or how their business goes over this course of this time. We're seeing 26% say, yes, we do have some, and those who are saying that, so it's a significant wedge, those who are saying that have 842 folks on short-term layoff, with 270 of them expected to return in the next 6 months. So there's a big disparity in that number. We also asked about permanent layoffs. 11%, so a smaller but significant wedge, saying that yes, we do have employees on permanent layoff, and 159 people captured in there. Talking about who is in the permanent layoff category. So we're seeing those are jobs in the manufacturing sector, in accommodation, food services, in arts, entertainment, and recreation, and in agriculture. So if you really think about how the COVID impacts, this sort of lines up, especially in terms of the food services and the arts and entertainment. So by employee size, we're seeing, the 10 to 19, the 1 to 4, and the 20 to 49 employees being the folks who have been hit the hardest by those permanent layoff, and as opposed to none for the larger businesses. So it's a really small business impact. And diving even a little bit deeper, seeing who are the dominant age groups in these employers who have folks on permanent layoff. So we're seeing 31 to 54, and the next biggest slice is that under 30 group. We asked about changes to address the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on your workforce. I think in this group alone, we can see that we have a big work from home group and flexible schedules. Increased use of technology and operations. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that number as we go on. Layoffs being the next one, and shutdowns after that. We asked what would be the most use moving forward. Offset wage costs, of course, outstripping every other option by a significant amount. But we're also seeing things like free health and safety training, recruitment support, upskill training, which is really fascinating because we have a really rich offering of these in our community. So we will be able to further coordinate and communicate with these groups to make sure that businesses can really get these supports that they need. Looking at who needs free health and safety training. So we've seen manufacturing, accommodation, food services, and healthcare and social assistance, all groups that have experienced a lot of changes in health and safety in the past few months. For recruitment support, we're seeing manufacturing, accommodation, food services, and healthcare and social assistance as the top 3. We asked about how many of the following skill levels are you planning to hire? And this is a really critical question because we can also find out what our community is prepared to offer by way of skill levels. So for the most, the largest group, we have our Class D laboring occupations. And the next one is Class C. So those are those intermediate occupations. And then a not insignificant number, almost matching, of our Class B and Class A. So we have a really wide variety of skills that are going to be in demand. And it's going to be up to our area to match and be able to find folks with that large spread of skills. We asked, since the beginning of COVID-19, has the use of technology affected your business or operation? If you came in early on, one of the topics of discussion on our slides was that in past Employer One surveys, we've asked in our area, hey, do you think a business is going to be really affected by technology? And we've had kind of a minority response saying yes. And of course, we see that massive change here, yes, 64%. So that's been really important and critical to capture that significant change in attitudes and in our area. We also asked, since the beginning of COVID-19, has the use of technology, oh right, this is the same question, sorry. And looking at those impacts, so we're seeing those impacts overwhelmingly in manufacturing, in healthcare and social assistance, and in other services. So that's people like your nonprofits. And of course that reflects the large technology changes there, and in retail trade. So technology for retail trade to keep those storefronts going online has also been a critical piece in this time. We asked, has your staff received additional training to learn about technology use? With 45% saying yes, maybe more than we would expect in normal times, and then still a large wedge saying no. And this has been really important to capture because, as I'm sure one of our community champions on our panels, Tamara Catterai, can speak to what hiring and recruitment and retaining problems can come up when technology use changes in the workplace. Similarly, we've asked, does your staff require additional training on using technology? So again, normally a wedge that we'd expect to be very small in these times has increased all the way up to 43% of those folks saying yes. And looking at what those sectors are, so other services, that's once again your nonprofits, because a lot of services have now moved online, and that delivery is a significant change for that workforce. Healthcare and social assistance being next, same thing, a lot of services being delivered online, not a group with many skill sets, but not necessarily one that was tech focused before the pandemic. And then after that coming in, we have retail trade. So that is it for the data presentation. At this point, if you have any questions, I'll invite you to start dropping them in the Q&A panel found on the Zoom toolbar. And I'm going to stop my share for a moment. And I'm going to invite our data analyst, Bashir Adeyemo, on screen. As a data, oh, Bashir, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you for joining us, Bashir. So as a data analyst and GIS mapping specialist with the Workforce Planning and Development Board, Bashir provides data services to assist a variety of stakeholders. He assists with workforce planning by identifying and quantifying the landscape of local businesses, employment services, job seekers, and other stakeholders. He has a background in urban and regional planning and is a graduate of the Geographic Information Systems, GIS, and Urban Planning System from Fanshawe College. Welcome, Bashir.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I'm gonna have to apologize that my video is not up.
That is a-okay.
One of the technical glitches I'm battling this morning, so I'm gonna have to apologize for that.
That's the fantastic world we live in. So if you have any questions about the data that you've seen, please feel free to either put them in the chat or to put them in the Q&A. While we wait for those to roll in, Bashir, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. When you were going through this information to begin with, what particular information really stood out to you?
I think one information I found really remarkable was the fact that we are beginning to have prolonged short-time layoffs. So in the stats you shared, less than 1/3 of laid off short-time employees would not be returning to work in the next 6 months. So I think that's really remarkable. And the implication of that would be that if this trend of restrictions continue, we would be seeing more people stay longer on short-term employment. And that means it's going to be difficult for them to get back on the job. People usually want to be off the job for 6 months and get something else. So we might be battling that for a while, which might not be good for the labor force, might not be good for the economy. Yeah, so that's one that stands out for me. Another one I saw, and I think you had mentioned in your presentation, that employers are kind of addressing the impact of COVID-19 through shutdowns and layoffs. I know we have the use of technology and work from home hours, right? That's what you would expect, right? But not shutdowns and layoffs. Unfortunately, employers have to do what they have to do. It's sign of the times we're in. So
That is so true. It's an important nuance. I think it's easily overlooked, the fact that we have this. It's easy to focus on this group of folks who are on short-term layoff and say they're coming back. When we see that they're not coming back, at least in the next 6 months, that might result in a big displacement of those people.
exactly.
Yeah. So what are some conclusions that you've remarked or that we can draw from this information?
I would say that from the results, I think employers are not solely looking at the government for support. They're also looking at the community for support. So I think the kind of support they would get from the government and ones they would get from the community would complement each other. One cannot stand without the other. We are seeing employers indicating that they need offset costs. Well, if that comes in, if they are not getting help through recruitment support or free health and safety training, then the wages they get from the government might not be really useful, right? So I think the support from the government would be complemented by the support from the community. So the two need to stand.
That's so true. It's it's almost a 50-50 push if we weigh it at least 50-50.
Yeah.
So my question is, you've done a fantastic job drilling in, pulling out those sectors. How can viewers make the most of this data in your opinion?
Well, I think a better way to look at the data and make the best use of it would be to kind of determine what kind of services you offer. We've done the job of dissecting the the sort of help that employers said they need. We dissected those into the list of industries. So what folks can do as employment services or literacy services is to see what kind of assistance employers need, right? And to target the industries that were listed under those assistance. So for instance, free health and safety or recruitment services, if you offer those services, you can actually reach out to us. We can pull the data regarding the industries that indicated that they need this kind of help. And yeah, we can share that. So I think looking at the data, the best way to make the best use of it is to determine the kind of services you offer and see who needs it the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good data is the foundation for good initiatives and good programming. So Thank you, Bashir, for procuring this excellent data and for speaking with me this morning. I do see, haven't gotten any questions in our Q&A, but I do see a question in the chat that I'm just going to save for our Community Champions panel in just a moment. For now, I'm going to take you to what I like to call the listening room. Allow me to share my screen for a second. There we go. So, I thought when I was putting this presentation together, what was really important to communicate is the amount of comments that we received on this survey, really an exceptional amount. And I wanted to give a moment to capture this and respond a little bit to the bits that we can respond to. So one of the things that we heard really, really loudly from employers is the cost of COVID, and that's, extra PPE, the cost of labor going up, or the cost of quality labor of keeping your employees definitely going up in a time where it's really, really difficult to work. And some people saying, hey, we're kind of an essential service. The economy needs us to go around, but we don't have any further funding. So think of the transportation and trucking sector, especially. Our local businesses and our people really need to receive their goods somehow, but with no extra funding, that's quite difficult. So I think it has been really important to capture that, and we can really see that coming through in the data. We also heard something really interesting, so recruitment and retention issues. So the fact that it's really easy to have this misconception that we have a skyrocketing unemployment rate and that having more job seekers will equal more applicants. And what we're hearing from the comments is that it doesn't, and that more applicants would equal even quality applicants, which is not necessarily true. And to add to that, there are retention struggles, especially in this time, but ongoing from pre-pandemic conditions as well. And of course, the first rule of business is always keep the people you have. So we do take a skills focus on all of our projects, which I'm sure Tamara and Deb will be able to talk about in the Champions panel. And it's been really important to capture this in order to really understand the possible impact of that focus. Another thing we heard is a sense of rural disconnection, that there's no or low internet in a lot of areas, and that's really impacting the ability to do business as a rural business. And also that it's difficult to recruit out there. It's hard to get people connected. And so what we do is support rural projects and especially folks who are bringing several projects that are working to bring internet and connecting people through transit and other modes to the rural areas. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was that we did see several thank yous in those comments, and I just wanted to capture that and also say thank you for participating and helping in making these programs go round. So with that, when we organized this presentation, in addition to the collecting and the sorting through the information, we wanted to capture the fact that this sort of collection and sorting and presentation is really only half the battle, and the impact of this kind of information goes a long way, and it does so for the people who are advocating for the local business community and working to support programs. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Champions panel for today, starting with, I'm just going to pull up her bio here, Tamara Katarai, the Executive Director of Literacy Link South Central. Since 1991, Literacy Link South Central has been supporting adult literacy and adult literacy programming across the counties of London, Middlesex, Oxford, Elgin, Brant, Haldimand, and Norfolk. LLSC helps audit literacy agencies to plan their services, helps adult literacy agencies to plan their services to meet the diverse needs of local citizens, businesses, and communities. They look at how adult literacy intersects with other community issues such as poverty, health, crime, and they advocate for the need for increased digital literacy skills to reduce the impact of the digital divide. Thank you for being with us, Tamara.
Thanks very much for having us.
And along with Tamara, we are also joined by Deborah Montenay, the Executive Director of the Workforce Planning Development Board. As the instigator of this research project, she brings a rich understanding gained from her work with private sector, various levels of government, and nonprofit organizations. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here this morning.
All right, so let's dive right into it. What impact does this information have on the people you serve or on your projects?
Wow, it's almost like I don't really know where to start. There are so many intersections. I guess for us, we use information like this to look at demographics because we want to see, who's being impacted by major, issues in the community, such as pandemics. And we compare that to the people that we're actually seeing in our programs to get a sense of whether or not we're seeing as many people as we could or should be. It can be really tempting, I think, as service providers sometimes to just serve who walks in the door or who contacts you virtually, as the case may be these days. But I think we have a greater responsibility than that. There are individuals who will not be able to easily make their way to our programs, may not know about them. And I feel like we have to do a better job of reaching out to those specific groups that we learn are disproportionately impacted by events in the community when it comes to skills development.
So important, being proactive and also seeking out that smallest group by which you can do the most good, right? And Deb, how about you? What impact does this information have on your people or your projects?
Well, for us, we take a demand-driven approach as we're looking at what's happening within the workforce. So we consider the business community as some of the groups that we're reaching out to. So certainly for the business community, I think the important piece for them is to recognize that while individual businesses will be going out and looking for people, this is the first time where this is happening en masse across every sector, across the entire region. And of course, it's not just applying to our area, so we're talking across all of southwestern Ontario. So while we're seeing higher numbers of unemployment at the moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make it easy to find the people you're looking for, because there will be this competition for people all happening at the same time, and that can create a lot of confusion for both the employers on exactly where are they going to be able to find people, and also for the job seekers. So that's why we're really encouraging everyone to connect with their employment services, because that will be the one opportunity where you may have for both that demand side from the employers and the supply side with job seekers to really connect. So I think for us, that's going to be a key area that, that we're encouraging employers to be talking about the opportunities they have as much as possible, because you never know where that connection is going to come.
Certainly. It's data, I think, that really solidifies what we've been learning over the past several years from other information, which is that it's not just a numbers issue, right? It goes so much deeper than that. So speaking of, let's bring up the S word, skills. How, skills being something that has definitely, I think sort of is in the backdrop of all of these numbers. How do you see that tying into this information?
Well, first of all, I think we have a bit of a shift in the types of skills or the way that people are thinking about and talking about skills. And even the fact that people are thinking and talking about skills is a bit unusual in the many years that I've been doing this business, where, I think traditionally employers expected, and it was reasonable to expect, that people would come to them with the skills that they needed to do the jobs that needed to be done. And I think for a variety of reasons, the changing nature of skills, the increasing types of skills that people need to work effectively, how quickly skills can change. I mean, certainly during a pandemic, but even without the pandemic, the skills that are needed for people to be successful on the job are changing. So I feel like there's going to be a much greater emphasis on soft skills, on transferable skills, and on people's ability to understand what the heck those terms mean, right? And how employers can identify the transferable soft skills that they might be looking for, and how job seekers might be able to articulate what it is that they can bring to the table or to an employment situation. And then as a system, we need to get better at letting people know that there are free programs out there that can assist people in building those skills.
And I'd like to just pick up on the transferable skills piece that Tamara mentioned, because I think that's going to be a huge piece for job seekers going forward in trying to be able to articulate how the skills that they may have from one sector can be used in another sector. And it's also going to be a bit of a challenge for employers as well, as they're going to be looking to bring people in who haven't necessarily worked in your sector before, but they have a skill set that would complement the work that you need done. So it does make it a little bit more difficult. You know, the job posting can't necessarily talk about X number of years of experience doing a particular job, because that may not be the person who's going to work best for you going forward. You may be looking for someone where you're now going to need to articulate more clearly exactly what do they need to be able to do. And then it does make for a more intricate hiring process, because you need to be able to look through the resumes that you might receive and then try and determine, you know, who has those skill sets that you're needing. And that's where it becomes really important, again, that the job seeker is able to articulate that. Because if you've got a piece of paper in front of you that you're looking at, it's hard to really see the person behind that if they're not able to articulate that well on paper.
Certainly, and capturing also the who of those transferable skills, I think, was such a big part of this project. So kind of diving deeper into that, what are the implications of the numbers that we saw today for our communities at large?
Well, I can start with that one if you'd like, because I love data, and Bashir has done a great job on pulling pieces out for us in this. But I'd like to go back to that very first slide that we talked about, where we ended up with 310 usable surveys that we could take information from in this survey that we had just done. And that gave us a 90% confidence level. But we need to remember that as we're looking at that data, this is what 310 businesses have said from across the London Economic Region. So it is representative of what's happening across the region, but we have to bear in mind there are 20,000 businesses. So the percentages really extrapolate into that many more businesses that will be looking. So again, it just takes me back to the fact that there could be a lot of hiring potentially happening at the same time across all different sectors. And it's going to be really important that employers are able to get their voice coming through that mix so that they're able to find the people that they need.
Sure. Tamara, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Bashir's comment that it's going to take more than one approach to meet some of the needs that are emerging. So it's not just something that the government can fix. I think it's going to be a hybrid of government support plus support from the community via some of the services that we already have, and maybe some services that need to be created or enhanced or ramped up. I think it's important to keep in mind too, from a community level, that there are huge differences between having access to tech. I mean, in some of our rural areas, I mean, the lack of internet or poor internet connectivity is a huge issue, and we can't understate that. But you can put devices into people's hands, but if they don't know how to use them, then that's an issue as well, right? So I think it's important that we keep in mind that in order for people to work optimally with technology, they're going to need some training. You know, and I say that, I know that our adult literacy programs, for example, when everything went virtual, then, you know, there are lots of platforms to use. We're using one right now, Zoom, but it was kind of like they reached out for a life raft, right? The first one they got a hold of and learned how to use, and that's what they've been investing their time in. But there's a big difference between kind of keeping your head above the water and getting to the point where you're doing things in a more optimal fashion. And I think we can extrapolate that across lots of different populations, right? People doing the best they can with what they have, but is that the ideal? And so I think from a service provision perspective, that's something to keep in mind, like an ongoing need for training at all levels for, you know, people entering our programs, for employees, for practitioners. I mean, it's changed the way that we're all working, hasn't it? The pandemic. So we're very mindful of the digital divide and the fact that it's increasing.
Yeah, it certainly has. And, you know, when you talk about the particular software that people use, I come from a tech background and I know that that stuff changes. So it's not just about the ability to use strictly one software, it's the underlying skills as well, right?
Well, and also we had,
Okay.
sorry, Jacqueline, I just want to say that a lot of people
Go
came
ahead. No, go
to
ahead.
our programs because they wanted to improve in different areas of skills, like maybe math, maybe communications, but now they have to master the digital skills in order to be able to learn the other skills, because that's the only way that they can receive that kind of training right now. So it's just another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, so critical. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our last question to our panelists. If you have additional questions from the chat or in the Q&A, please feel free to drop them as they answer and think about what you'd like to ask. So what is something that you'd like businesses to know about the work of your networks?
Deb, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll start with this one. I think what we'd like businesses to know is that there are supports out there to try and help them in their hiring needs and in being able to connect them to the job seekers that are currently out looking for work. And it's really important that, that they do connect with these services. Often they're referred to as the free services, but they really aren't, because these services have all been paid for through the tax dollars that everyone has contributed to. So essentially, I like to tell the businesses, you've already prepaid for these services, essentially. So it's kind of like, you know, you have the gift card and you then need to choose whether or not you're going to use it. And so I think particularly at this time, as we're looking at all of these businesses trying to come back and really make some plans for the future as well, this is the optimal time for them to be able to connect with the services that are out there, find out what's available, what can help support their staff as they're hiring, but also what is out there that can help support their current staff so that they're able to position all of their employees in the best position possible for that company to move forward.
I love that gift card analogy, Deb. That is, I think, something that we hear a lot. How about you, Tamara?
I guess I'd like for businesses to understand that upgrading or skill building programs are not only for people who are unemployed, certainly they are for people who are unemployed and who want to find work, but between 25 and 40% of the people who attend adult literacy programs are already working, whether that's part-time or full-time. And it's interesting because I know some of our providers have been at community events, job fairs, you know, promoting their services, and they know people locally, and they'll say to an employer, oh, are you interested in finding out more? And that employer will say, oh, we don't have anybody who struggles with skills. Meanwhile, the program knows that there are at least, you know, 5 people in their program who come from that particular company, right? So it's almost like they have to take a backdoor approach, the employees, as opposed to being able to look at skills development as part of, you know, a company's culture, right? So it'd be great to see a bit of more of a move in that direction. And also, I guess, the retention question, or the issue of retention. So oftentimes, if you have that great employee and, you know, they've been with you for a while and they've got that great work ethic and you really don't want to let them go, but it may be an issue of skills and the employee not having sufficient skills, then I hope that employers would reach out to local adult literacy programs to see if there's a way that that employee can be retained and just learn on the side in a very contextualized way what it is they need to learn for their job, right? Because that's something that our programs can do, and that would help employers. You don't want to let go of a really great employee. So, yeah.
And this is why I love having both of you on this panel, because it really feeds into each other. We're working on, you can retain using free services. Isn't that fantastic? So to carry on this conversation, I'm seeing some responses from the chat. Earlier on, we got a question that was tackled by Bashir. I'll read his response and then I'll ask if you guys have anything to add. So Janice asks, what kind of free training may best help employers at this time? And do you think there's a preferred delivery method? Bashir did mention that, we have a slide on what kind of training they're looking for. It's those offset wage costs as a support, but also that free health and safety training, recruitment support, and digital support. And upskill training were the top items that employers indicated that they needed support with. Would you guys like to elaborate on that?
Well, I was surprised at how many times skills came up in different forms, right? So at the very bottom, it was literacy training, but then you also see like the soft skills training, the upskill training, communications, all of those things, digital literacy, they all fall within the skills sphere. And so sometimes I think it can be difficult for employers to try to, dice and splice all the different types of skills that are out there. But my suggestion would be, don't worry about it. If you think you have a skills issue, reach out to the skills development community and we can help you sift through what it is that you need, what providers might be able to come in and support you with that.
And I would just add to that we didn't ask in this particular survey about preferred methods, but we have asked that in earlier Employer One surveys. And it really is a range across depending upon the employers. For larger employers, often they'll consider doing in-house training. For those smaller employers, they're usually looking for training that they can either send people out to, or currently online is probably the training that most people will be looking for at the moment. So when you're looking at types of delivery method, it really does depend on the type of training and what the employers are going to be looking for, how much of it can be delivered online. There certainly are a lot of different training pieces where there's a lot of value in still being able to get people together. The question really becomes, how can you safely do that in the current situation?
Yeah, very true. So I see a question from Larry, and I'm just going to expand it, Larry. So in your opinion, how can folks from the business community or other businesses support other businesses right now?
I think the biggest thing that I've been hearing from the community, as well as business leaders, as well as municipal leaders, is that taking a look to shop local, right? Seeing, are there some opportunities out there? We know that we're going to be approaching the holiday season as well. There's a big push that's starting now to get people to be, rather than doing everything through Amazon and having everything delivered to your door, the suggestion is to take a look at what are some of those businesses out in the community. Is there an opportunity to purchase directly from local businesses, to support those local businesses, to try and encourage that the dollars to start circulating more strongly in the community? And that's going to as well lead for the businesses to be able to continue to hire and stabilize as well, because we are still at this point in a bit of a state of flux. Businesses are hoping that we're starting on that downside and the COVID situation is going to end up being behind us, but there's no guarantee for anyone at this point. And so, that becomes the real crux of it is, can you source things locally? Can you purchase locally? And what can you do to help support local businesses in that way? And then that will help our economy at the local level as much as possible.
Absolutely. Anything to add to that, Tamara?
I don't think so. I think Deb did a great job of summarizing there. So
yeah, reach out, stay local, and as we saw from our data, those the impacts are most strongly felt by those smaller businesses with fewer employees. So I'd like to share, thank you so much, Tamara and Deb, for being our champion panelists for today. If you can, of course, get connected with these groups at workforcedevelopment.ca, our website, or at llsc.on.ca and find out what's coming next. Speaking of what's coming next, I'm going to start my share screen again. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of what now of all of this information. So we've already talked about the potential benefits for reading and actually using this information to help inform you and your initiatives and even your hiring strategies. So it will be available in the coming hours on workforcedevelopment.ca/library, the presentation that I gave today. Additionally, what you'll be able to see on in 24 hours is a follow-up email with all this information. Secondly, get connected. You know, you have that gift card, go use it on your services. And so we have a map, which maps all of the positions in our area. And you can find that at workforcedevelopment.ca/map. But if you scroll down, you can also just focus on where are the EO services, where can you get language training and literacy and basic skills training for you or your workforce, and you can locate them there. And secondly is to keep your eye out for more. So if you are from the food business or if you have connections to the food retail business, on October 19th, we will be hosting a webinar alongside the folks from Fresher, which is from the HEAL Laboratory at Western University. And they're doing some really fascinating research on the COVID impacts on specifically the food workforce. So if you really want to dive deep and get to know more about that project, I recommend you come join us on that day. Also keep a lookout in January, we are having our Employer One survey as usual. So this was the Employer One Change Matters survey, just to capture what those COVID changes were since our usual survey in January. But in January, we're coming out with that Employer One survey. Once again, asking you on how are we doing, how is workforce changing over the course of this recovery, and comparing it to previous years. So I'll just stop my share here. So I'm seeing a lot of positive feedback in the chat. Thank you so much. And so I will be again posting this presentation on YouTube, and you'll receive a link to share it with folks who weren't able to attend 24 hours afterwards. And of course, keep a lookout on those slides for those slides on our website. Lastly, when we end this presentation, you will be prompted to answer a few questions. And so these questions are going to help us both understand a little bit more about needs in the business community for labor market information, so that it'll inform the creation of our Employer One survey, so you can help us come out with our next one. But also some of the questions help keep our projects going. So I would ask that you fill them out. There's only 5, so it should only take a few seconds. And once again, thank you to our panelists, Tamara, Deb, and Bashir, and thank you so much for coming out to this presentation. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.